Hello, Holy Communion. This is Brian Barnhart, your 2022 Treasurer's Report, and look at the 2023 budget. I'll try to make it brief, because I know I've got more interesting things to be thinking about and doing. I'll do a quick recap of how 2022 ended up, and then I'll move on to where I think 2023 will be going in terms of our budget. In 2022, overall, we outperformed our budget by a large margin. We planned a budget deficit of about $62,000. We actually ended up with a deficit of only $3,000. So our expenses and our income basically leveled out, which is fantastic. The story there is that we basically didn't spend as much as we budgeted to. COVID didn't allow us to do the full year of programming and church life that we expected. We eased back into church life and ministries, but we still didn't spend the full amount that we had planned on by the beginning of the year. We also had a very strong year of contributions from our members. So thank you to you for your both pledges and your actual contributions. Some of our biggest gains in income actually came from our non-pledgers, and we got another about $13,000 just in incremental gains from people that had not pledged in the previous year. I interpret this to be that our membership is growing, even in the time since COVID and since pledge cards were received for 2022's pledging year. So I think we're picking up speed, and our work is becoming visible to members that we haven't had in our pews in the past. So a lot of good signs for the future. Some other highlights from our 2022 budget or 2022 performance is that in addition to our member giving increasing by about $18,000, we also saved quite a bit of money by having some vacancies on our staff throughout the year. We didn't spend money on things that we normally would have, such as our children's minister position or our child care contractors. We just didn't have the use for them in a COVID environment. So we saved quite a bit of money. We continue to rent out part of our space within the church to our partners, Women's Voices, a gun violence prevention group, and we rented out the house immediately next door, which we own, called the Gannon House, to our friends at the St. Patrick's Center to house those that are transitioning out of homelessness. So we've continued to receive some rents from both of those, which is helpful. There's a tremendous opportunity for more rental opportunities or rental arrangements with other nonprofits and others in the future. I'd like to see us move that space more in 2023. Please do reach out to Mike and others on the vestry if you can help volunteer to fill those spaces and increase our income. We again received in 2022 two different grants. One from Diocese's New Ventures grant, and the other one was from our Bishop Thompson's fund. Both of which were supporting our Grace Gathering ministry. And then a couple other unexpected gains or improvements over where we budgeted to be. We're actually spending quite a bit less in 2022 on things like utilities. And part of that could be that our capital campaign investments, like a new boiler, are actually giving us the efficiency gains and the electricity gains from better lighting and so forth, that we're just not spending it. Another interpretation is we couldn't use our building as much as we wanted to in 2022 due to COVID, when we just didn't have as many people in and out of the building throughout the week. So I'm not sure entirely where the savings is coming from there, but we're doing much better on utility spend than we have in the past, which is a goal that we'd had for a while on our efficiencies. In terms of our balance sheet of where we are now, we have a large pile of cash on hand, which was planned and is being used for our 2019 capital campaign predominantly. We have $346,000 in our checking accounts and another $176,000, which we've invested for additional income as we pay down our debt for that capital campaign. On the note of the capital campaign, we still are making our scheduled payments as planned to our White Fund loan, which is the loan we get from the diocese. Paying it down on a regular schedule that we are tracking to very well. paying about $63,000 a year in our debt repayment. That's both interest and principal. Our interest rate is 1.4% right now, which is not going to be changing during the life of the loan. Given that we have $523,000 in available assets we could be spending, and our current White Fund loan is about $501,000, I'm going to ask that we all kind of keep an eye on that in the years ahead. We have multiple years of cash ahead, but we are paying a large portion of we're using our pile of cash in reserves to pay that back. And there's not going to be a lot left if we continue paying on the schedule we have now. So we need to think about how are we going to give ourselves a little bit more wiggle room if we're to be able to pay off our debts and have extra operating funds that make us feel comfortable 4 or 5 years out. Other updates on financials for 2022. As usual, we had our auditors do a financial review of 2021's financial data and reporting, and they noted that everything looks to be in order and we're in good shape in terms of our financial reporting and our controls to make sure everything is as it should be. And then finally, I mentioned about the capital campaign before, but we finally finished final spending and expenses for our capital campaign with stained glass windows that went in 2022. We don't expect any other capital campaign expenditures other than paying back our debt to the diocese. Changing gears, we're going to look ahead now to 2023's budget. I'm going to actually try to share my screen very briefly here, just to give you a few highlights of what the 2023 budget is looking like. You can all see me now. So here are the numbers we just looked at in terms of our 2022 budget, and you can see the difference between our 2022 budget and 2022 actuals. Notable improvement, and again, the big story here is that we just didn't have as many expenses as we had budgeted. As we look ahead to 2023, we are budgeting again for a deficit of about $39,000. And the biggest changes that you'd see between last year's budget and this year's budget is that we have received quite a few more pledges than we typically have in the past, an additional $25,000. 2023, we have the most pledges that we've ever had before. So congratulations and thank you all for your commitment to Holy Communion. That's going to enable us to do more things in the future than we've been able to do in the past. We've also received more funding from the Robert Committee, which is one of our endowments. They've given us another $15,000 beyond which they've given us in 2022. Some of the other things that are helping us to make our budget more favorable is that we've decreased some of the outreach project spending in our budget that we'd had planned from the last several years, but quite honestly not been able to use. For example, or chosen to focus on other things. For example, some of the Pride outreach programs and some of the IAF expansion projects, trying to get a community organizer set up in St. Louis. We just haven't moved forward as much as we'd planned on those projects, and so we've moved them to the budget. I've also removed the children's minister position, not used that position for several years now, and choosing to remove it from the 2023 budget. Some of the things that are not working in our favor for 2023 is we aren't going to get one of the grants we've received for the last 2 years, the diocese new venture grants. So our income is going to decrease by about $25,000. Also, times of high inflation, we are having more salary increases to keep up with inflation and the cost of having talented folks on our staff. So some of our costs for both salaries and health insurance are going up as well. Of course, we never know what the future is going to be, but things that we should be aware of is that with given how much of our funding comes from endowments, we should be aware that if the stock market is continuing to be lower than it has been in the past, that will decrease some of our income in the future because we receive a portion of a certain percentage of the balance of the endowments every year. So we should anticipate that to decrease a little bit. Also, our diocesan pledge, kind of our taxes to the diocese every year, is based on our income. And if we receive more income in terms of pledging in 2023, we will be paying more in the future to the diocese, just the way that works. One final item I want to make sure that everyone kind of keeps their eye on, and I've mentioned this before, is that our net income that we're budgeted for is 39,000, a deficit of 39,000. That's separate. That is only going to represent our operations. In addition to that number is that debt payment for capital camp. And again, we pay about $63,000 a year to the diocese for that. So by the end of the year, if we perfectly follow our budget, our total cash that we're spending, our operating budget deficit, and the payments made for our debt, we would have a decline in our cash of about $102,000, which is right on the schedule of payments to the diocese, but we just need to keep an eye on how much cash is going to be going out compared to where we feel comfortable in terms of having a operating buffer in the future. So things to think about for 2023 and beyond. I'm sure we'll hear more about ways that we might be able to increase our income to help enable us to pay off that and enable us to do more programming and ministry work as well. So those are the big items and changes for 2022 and 2023. I look forward to seeing all of the wonderful things that our church continues to do, and see our hopefully membership and involvement to continue to expand as COVID restrictions and comfort level of coming back into routine church life grows in 2023. So thank you all very much. Send questions as you have them.